Hello everybody, this is Doc. I make manga and webtoon. You can check some of my artwork if you're interested, some of my stories. But today I am here as a One Piece fan to do the second part of my review on the One Piece live action by Netflix. I'm really happy to be able to talk about this. I will try my best to do everything in one go this time. So episode 3 to 8. Except I'm going to be doing things by arc instead of by episodes. I want to start by saying that this One Piece live action is truly something absolutely phenomenal. I've already talked about it in the intro and the outro of last video, but it's truly something special, and I think that it only just deepened my love for One Piece. The way it got me invested into the community and the anticipation for it, and now the community, it being able to talk about it with other people. It's truly beyond like anything, and it's just so special, right? Because to me, I had somewhat of a difficult history with getting into One Piece, actually. I think that it's truly the community that sold it for me, to be completely honest, because the manga is quite slow-paced, and it's not necessarily for everybody. I know that my attention span is absolutely terrible, so for me it was already kind of difficult to get through One Piece, and I finally ended up dropping the series for like a year during the Dressrosa arc, so around volume 60, something like that. And yeah, it took me an entire year to go back to it when my brother spoiled me about Gear 5. And I was like, this is absolutely amazing, and I had to go back to, reading the manga. So I never considered myself like a One Piece fan until I went back to the manga and read Whole Cake Island and the entire like Wano Saga and stuff. And those were some of my two favorite experiences of actually like reading the manga. And then after that, I finally was able to dive into the community without fearing of being spoiled. And from this point on, following the manga every single week was the best experience. And so truly the community, again, is something that really sold it for me. So I'm really glad to see how well the OPLA is being received by the community. And again, it's just, all of this is just deepening my love for the series. And now, with the retrospective, it's way easier for me to go back to reading One Piece or watching. I started the anime for the first time with my mom, so I'm going to that as well. But anyways, enough talking about me, let's actually talk about the series. So last time we finished after Buggy's arc, so episode 2, that would be, yeah. So now let's do 3 to 4, the Syrup Village arc. So I gotta say that Syrup Village was probably some of my favorite episode/arc to watch on the first time. It wasn't as good of an experience on a rewatch, if I'm being completely honest, just because of the pacing. I think that is a little bit slower in all of this, so it's not as interesting on a rewatch, to be completely honest. But I did still really liked it. And yeah, I'm going to be talking about all the stuff that I liked. First of all, before we actually get to the village, there's this entire little scenes with Zoro, Luffy, and Nami on the boat. And they're, having amazing interactions as always. And there's this one Zoro joke about him saying that the toilets are broken because there's water coming in. And Nami's like, there are no toilets. And the first time that I watched this scene, I was like, is it what I think? Did they actually make that kind of joke with Zoro? Like, where the fuck was the man shitting this entire time? You know what I mean? Like, I was like, did they actually do that? And at first I was like, maybe I misunderstood. But after talking with many other people, I realized that I was not the only one who thought this. So it was obviously, a joke that they intentionally did, which was pretty funny, I have to admit. And this is when we see more of, we already had that before with the previous episode, I believe. But we continue on seeing like Nami with the little Bluetooth thing that she had. And it continues the build-up of Nami ultimately leaving the crew. So that was pretty great. And then we jump into Syrup Village. So I have to say, I don't have many complaints when it comes to filming and all of this. But, and I know I'm not the only one again, the very beginning of how it was filmed with the crew in Syrup Village was a little bit confusing, to be honest. I don't really know what was happening, but those were very close shots. And the background was blurry and, a lot of movement of camera. And it was very dizzying to watch. I think I see what they were going for because with this entire village and the entire arc, you're kind of supposed to feel a little bit, uneasy, and you feel like you've set foot in an entirely new sort of place. You feel like there's a lot of Alice in Borderland vibes, and so by giving that kind of visual where it feels like they're drunk almost, it makes you feel a little bit of that, especially with like how the buildings and the background, the houses go really up high. You don't really see the sky, and it feels very claustrophobic. So I kind of get maybe what they were going for, but again, I still didn't really like the look of it. I didn't feel like it was enjoyable, and again, I felt more like dizzy than anything with the scene, and it was a bit awkward, to be honest. But that's again a minor detail. It only lasted for a few minutes, I think, so that was completely fine. Then we get to have Usopp meeting with the crew. First of all, I gotta say, I really love Usopp and how Jacob portrays him. I think it's absolutely wonderful. He is very lovable and charming, in all of this, and I think he's really funny, etc. His character translated pretty well, and it's not too far from what I envisioned for a live action version of Usopp. I think it works perfectly well. So yeah, him meeting the Straw Hats for the first time, I love the scene of Luffy, seeing the Mary and like loving him. And before that, there was some arguing about Nami wanting to steal a ship, and then Nami and Zoro kind of form an alliance of being like, yeah, we're gonna steal the ship. Like, there's just no way Luffy is going to convince somebody to just give us a ship for free. All of this was really well played. And then Luffy sees the Mary, and he's just like drawn to it in the same way that he was drawn to like the devil fruit and stuff. So that was really awesome. And then we meet Usopp, and I really love the energy, the humor and stuff, like the way he kind of introduces himself and why he works on the ship. He's like, oh yeah, he gives a super lengthy title, and Zoro is like, you actually just clean the bird shit on the ship. And it's really, really funny. I love that. So I'm going to be talking a little bit more about this kind of Alice in Wonderland vibe with the sets. The sets, especially, once we get into Kaya's garden and then mansion and all of this. I really loved what they were, going for this entire time. I remember reading about some of the set designers who worked on the mansion in the press release. I think it was a press document or something like that. And it was really interesting to see how they built this entire thing of like, why they put like porcelain plates on the wall, all of this with Kaya's parents being shipwrights, then maybe, having this history of having to give ships to pirates who might not have the money, and so they would give fine porcelain and treasures in exchange. So that was very interesting to kind of read about, and it made the universe even more rich. And I think that all of the sets, I loved Kaya's mansion. It's a close second of my favorite sets in the entire show. Really, really loved that. I think it was absolutely on point. Same for the costume. I really like how everything feels, you really feel like you're in a fairy tale, and everything looks almost like too unreal, a little bit costumey, but I like that aspect. I like this entire thing. We're going to talk more about it with, Clohadol and the Black Cat Pirates and all of this. We're going to get more of this kind of costumey, like, kind of vibe and stuff, a cartoony vibe. But personally, I really enjoyed it. So yeah, Kaya and Clohadol, absolutely perfect. I love both actors and how they portray the character. Kaya, you feel like she is this kind of like, again, you feel like you're in a fairy tale and you met the nice princess character who's just like, she can't go out of her mansion and she's sick and fragile and all of this. Like, it's this archetype, but it works so well. And Clohadol, he's like so stoic, and there's this build up already about him being like, kind of maybe hiding some things, with Zoro being like, I've seen you somewhere, that kind of stuff. I think it was really well made, and I loved both of their portrayal. Clohadol was, again, perfect. I love the stance, the way he moves himself, the way he talks, his face, how serious he is. And I think it works perfectly for the character, honestly. One of the things that I anticipated the most, that I, was the most excited about with this live action, weirdly enough, was Kaya and Usopp together, the interactions. Obviously, my first thought was Usopp, being at the window of Kaya's mansion, because this is how it's portrayed most of the time in the manga when they talk together. But they went a different route. And honestly, I don't care. I really loved the decision that they made of, instead of having Usopp at her window, they actually get to go inside the house, and Usopp uses the little kind of hidden secret passage or whatnot. And I feel like it really feeds into this fairy tale Alice in Wonderland. Like, you might get just lost in this place, like, because it's so huge. You know, there are some secret hidden way, like, stuff, and it's awesome, honestly. And the decision of making everything, you know, happen in one single place, like in like a huis clos kind of deal. I don't know if there's a, you know, English term for that. But yeah, making everything happen in one place like that, I think was a very interesting choice, and I really loved that direction. I think it really served on an artistic standpoint because they delivered so much with the visuals. So once we get more of what is going on in Dimension, we see the tea that, you know, Kaya drinks, and there's this entire thing with the potion. I kind of clocked it from the beginning, but honestly, I don't care because I don't think it was supposed to be that secretive. Like, even Cloudle is supposed to feel much weirder than in the manga, I feel like, once you first see him there, and you get pretty much the reveal that he is like evil on the first episode that he appears. So I don't feel like it was, you know, supposed to be so, you know, secret, non-obvious, I guess you could say. But yeah, I really liked this idea, and I thought that it was a very clever thing to do, to have Kuro poisoning her little by little. I think that was the best way to adapt it. And honestly, I think it's even better than in the manga, if I'm being completely honest. You know, I'm not a Syrup Village hater. You know, from the manga, I know a lot of people don't, you know, kind of heavily dislike this arc. I personally like it. I think it works well the way it is in the manga. For example, like we have like Django, we have also the little kids, Usopp's crew. The kids are adorable in the manga. I don't mind them being taken off the story. Same for Django, because it works for what they decided to do. It's a different version of the story. It's kind of like a multiverse. You know what I mean? So I think Django wouldn't have fit in the aesthetic of the Black Cat Pirates being the antagonists, because they really went in for this aesthetic with Kuro and then the two pirates, the two crew members. I think they really went for this aesthetic, and Django just doesn't fit in. So I think it was a great idea that they took him out of the story. We could see him later still, because we know we have a casting, we have a wanted poster, so who knows? He might enlist in the Marine, and we might have him moonwalking on a Marine ship next season, for what we know. Continuing on the wackiness of this arc in the best way possible, Sham and Buchi. I love them. I just personally love them. I understand that these two characters specifically, and this entire arc overall, might not be everyone's cup of tea. But I personally really loved them. I loved the acting, I loved the costumes, the makeup. I think it was just so over the top, so silly, but it worked perfectly fine. Again, it really brought me back to childhood, and like it almost felt like an old horror, fantastic kind of funny movie. I don't know how to explain this, but I really loved what they were going for. And the very like all over the place with their design and stuff, and how it contrasts with later on, you know, they fight Zoro, and you know how all of this contrasts. I think it's really interesting, and it was very entertaining to watch. Just a very quick note about that. I am so glad that they didn't cut out that kind of stuff from the One Piece live action, because this silliness, it's what characterizes One Piece. You know, it's one of the main thing that characterizes One Piece, is how over the top and crazy it is. And I feel like, yeah, it's definitely what sets it apart from other, not only other mangas, but other stories in general, now that it's, you know, part of the even more mainstream media, I guess. And if you take that away, I feel like it's not One Piece anymore. And obviously here I was talking about the Black Cat Pirates, but it's even bigger than that, because they made sure to keep the right amount of this craziness within One Piece. And when you look at some of the craziest and bestest things that has happened in One Piece, like the Gear 5, again, I'm not going to be spoiling exactly what it is for the people who are not caught up, but this is the perfect example of what perfectly represents One Piece and its greatness. Now, I haven't even talked about Mary. Mary is absolutely perfect. I loved, from the moment where you saw him in the trailer, I saw the makeup and the wig, and it just looks so good. I don't know how they managed to make this design look so good. I would have never thought about it. but it just looks amazing. And by the way, one of my favorite scenes from the trailer was Kuro appearing behind Mary with the claws and stuff. This was just chef's kiss. This was just absolutely perfect. I really love this kind of eerie kind of feel that it gave you, and just the composition of the image is absolutely gorgeous. And actually, seeing the scene and Mary being killed and all of this, I think it was perfectly executed. And then especially when Zoro and Usopp go to the cave and they just find the body, and all of this, and then it being thrown into the, I don't know how to call this in English, but the stuff they're being thrown into, yeah, with Zoro. I think that was great. And the entire horror kind of element was really well made. Once again, with the mention, with everything, it was a very smart decision. And you can feel the anxiety growing more and more with the arc. Especially, I think that something that was really well made is with, obviously Usopp's character being this boy who cried wolf, and then nobody believing him. But then you've got Koby arriving into the city, and Koby is not here in this moment in the manga. But then him being here and believing Usopp, and you're like, oh, finally, someone believes him, like, this is all going to succeed and stuff. But then Koby goes to Dimension, and you see how easily Kuro kind of shuts him off, and you can see, like, Koby being anxious with Usopp and all of this. It really makes you feel more anxious, and then Dimension ultimately kind of closes on itself. And yeah, so I've already kind of jumped ahead, but I'm going to go back to more of the stuff that happens in Dimension before we get to the dark stuff, I guess, the ultimate part. I gotta say, I really loved Nami and Kaya together. I've seen a lot of people say that we didn't get much of Usopp, but we did get a lot of Nami, especially with her development with Kaya. This is something with Nami. She's a girl's girl, She's always going to very easily be able to empathize with the girls that they meet in their adventures. And I think it was very lovely to see that happening with Kaya. That also gave us more Kaya development. She was always a character that I enjoyed, but she was very little developed. Here, I really liked what they did with her character. And seeing Nami bond with her was very, very sweet. And the entire scene, where Kaya asks Nami, have you ever, lost a loved one? And you see Nami being like, no, I never. This broke my heart, and I was like, yeah, girl, no, you're not helping yourself. But yeah, that was absolutely great and lovely. And this entire night of everybody kind of, like, nobody going to sleep, basically. Luffy was just going to the kitchen, I guess. Zoro was having a night walk. Nami was out stealing. That was absolutely hilarious. I love that. Let's talk about the flashbacks, because we did get 2 of the Straw Hats flashback in this thing. We got Zoro flashbacks, first of all. So Zoro's flashback, I liked it. I liked especially the sets, the forest, all of this. I think it was really beautiful. I loved the place where they train. I loved all of this being open in the forest. I think that was absolutely gorgeous. I liked Kuina. I like little Zoro's actor. I think they were both great. However, I am a little bit disappointing about them cutting some stuff off with the dojo master. So I just forgot his name for some reason. But if you're a live action only, you might not know this. The dojo master is actually Kuina's dad. But it's not mentioned in the flashback because all of the scenes with him are being cut. And one of the big differences that this made for me, because I'm not picky, with the changes that they made. I loved most of them, but this is one of the ones that I don't approve of. And it's them cutting the scene of Kuina's dad talking with other men of the dojo, talking about how, even though Kuina is beating all of the adults in here and she's like the strongest, she will never be able to become head of the dojo because she is a woman, she's a girl. And so you really understand where Kuina's kind of beliefs come from, because we do have this conversation between her and Zoro, who is very similar to the manga, where she talks about how even though she is stronger than him now, and in a little bit of time, she is just going to be ultimately kind of weaker than him because he's going to grow more, he's going to gain more muscle, he's going to become stronger because he's a guy. And there's this confrontation, and I think it's a really interesting and important message, this entire thing with Kuina. And it talks about sexism in a way, but it lost a bit of the meaning with the fact that we don't understand where these thoughts are, coming from. So as much as I think that if you got two brain cells connected, you probably would understand that it's not just her coming up with that thing and that it's probably something that she's heard. I still think it was a bit of a waste because not everybody might catch on it, depending on how, not everybody puts in effort to, think about the deeper meanings of things. Not everybody is very aware about themes like sexism and all of this. So I think it would have been great to put it in. But anyways, let's just move on. So Usopp's flashback as well. Usopp's flashback, I loved it. I think it was just what it needed to be. It was very short but very effective. You get to understand where Usopp is coming from, why he lies. His mom looked exactly like in the manga, like her facial features, I can't explain, even though there's the nose, minus the nose, but for some reason, even though the nose is completely different, it still looks like her. I don't know how to explain it, but anyways, this was really effective. I think it worked really well, and I genuinely felt sad when she died, even though all of this happened in the span of a few seconds, I genuinely felt the emotion that was conveyed. And yeah, let's move on to the final facts and all of this. I liked it. I think it was funny again with the Black Cap Pirates versus Zoro. That was great. The final fight with Kuro and Luffy, that was great as well. I don't have much to say on that end, honestly. It is what it is. I think it was effective. It was well done. It's never one of my favorite parts of One Piece personally. So yeah. So one thing that I didn't talk about was Luffy convincing Kaya to give them the ship. I really love this entire scene of them dining together and Luffy just walking in on the table like, this guy, I swear to God. Anyways, that's a very Luffy thing to do. But I think in this scene you can really see how he's able to get people to kind of like him and want to, go with what he wants, you know what I mean? So you can see kind of Kaya's shift in her eyes, like the stuff that she feels. First, she's a little bit, taken aback by the fact that they're pirates. And then you see her eyes shining by the end of his speech. And same for Zoro. At first, he's like, oh, fuck, what is he doing? And then, he's looking at him, same with the eyes being sparkly and stuff, being like, yeah, that's my captain. Luffy he's the type of guy that you cannot help but like. And something in this arc that I think was very cleverly made was the little cuts that we had from the action in Syrup Village with Garp and Kobe together. I think that was very well made again. And it was a great way to kind of breathe in between all of the happenings in there. And especially since everything was happening within dimension and stuff, we would have felt way too claustrophobic if we wouldn't have those cuts of them being together. And I have to say, I really love them playing on the board game together. I think it's a trope, right? It's something that I see quite often, but I love this trope. Honestly, I think it's always an interesting way to make characters bond together. I think it's pretty fun, My first thought was about Hunter x Hunter with Komugi and Meruem. But yeah, absolutely love that trope. I realized while editing that I didn't talk about one of my favorite scenes that Kuro was in. And that was during the last fight with Luffy and the moments where he starts crying. Well, actually, it wasn't during the fight itself, but it was when he was trying to look for Kaya within the room and they were all hidden. And he starts just ranting about all the stuff that he had, quote unquote, endured during those years, having to answer all of her requests, having to help her constantly, having to hear her talking about her problems and whatnot. And he starts crying from rage. And I couldn't explain how much I love this scene. And I think it's a beautiful characterization for Kuro. And it really shows how he had to put his self-love and ego on the side for that many years just to be able to achieve his plan. And I think it's absolutely wonderfully done. And I wanted to point that out really quick. So that brings us to the end of this entire arc, we got the conclusion of Kaya and Usopp kissing. I kid you not, when they kissed, I actually stood up. I was like, yeah! You know, I put my fist to the sky and I was like, yes! I knew it! You know, I always knew it in my heart. And my brother was looking at me absolutely crazy. But I was so happy that they actually did it. It was really cute and they built it up really nicely. Talked about it in the previous video from the little talk that Kaya has with Nami and then Zoro has with Usopp. That was really, really well made, and ultimately they kissed. It was very adorable. I loved it. My only small criticism towards the conclusion was the lack of emphasis that was put on Kaya when it comes to, you know, regarding Mary's death. I feel like we lacked a bit of a reaction from her. You know, Mary is like literally the only person she had left, because she discovered, like, she had 2 people left in her life, pretty much, apart from, there was the 2 servants. But then there was Clado, who ended up being Kuro, a pirate who was here to kill her and take all of her money. And then you had Mary. And so Kuro, we know what happened to him, and Mary died. And so she was completely left alone. But somehow we didn't get a conclusion really much on that. But we did get the nod, obviously, of Luffy deciding to name the boat the Going Merry in reference to Mary. So that was pretty sweet. But that's the only thing we got, which was a little bit surprising, especially since Kaya got all of this development throughout these 2 episodes. But yeah, that's just a small point. And so we're heading into the Baratie arc. So the Baratie arc is one of my favorite from East Blue. Arlong is very special. I mean, Arlong Park is very special because it is full of very iconic moments. And Nami is like my second favorite character, so it does have a big kind of impact on me. But Baratie, I just cannot explain. I have a special connection to this arc. The only thing that I dislike in this one is Don Krieg as an antagonist. And, well, you know, when I saw that he was not in the arc, pretty much, I was very, very happy. So I think they took out the entire thing that was omittable, which was absolutely fantastic, and Baratie is amazing as an arc. So before we actually get there, we have the fight scene. I don't exactly know how you would call this in English, but yeah, Garp attacking Luffy's boat with his, and it's really fun. The entire scene is fun. Nami trying to kind of, you know, explain to the guys what they need to do and, you know, try to get them to attack back or find a solution, and everyone is so disorganized. Like, it's the first time we see Zoro so anxious. He's like, you know, you can clearly see that he doesn't know what he's doing, and it's very funny. You see Garp attacking the ship and Luffy replicating, inflating his body and pushing back the cannon. Garp's ship, and even though he was angry all this time, you can see how he's proud of his grandson, and it's pretty funny. And, well, by the way, we get the reveal of Garp being Luffy's grandpa, which is, again, pretty fun. And then we move on to them kind of escaping in the fog. This is a really great build-up to actually get to the Baratie, with kind of Luffy smelling the food and stuff. That was really fun, and we finally get the reveal of the most beautiful, gorgeous set in this entire production. I cannot believe that this set actually exists. I am jealous. I really want to go there so bad. I want to eat at the Baratie. But yeah, anyways. By the way, I don't know how you guys say Baratie in English. It's either Baratie or Baratie. It's Baratie in French. But yeah, anyways. So we finally get there. It's as good as I would have imagined it to be. I love Zeph and Sanji. I think they're absolutely amazing. From the casting to the actual design, what they did with the wig, the makeup, the outfits, all of this, the actors are spectacular. Zeph has to be one of my favorite kind of design in the entire show. I think it was so well made. Like, the little braided mustache is phenomenal. He looks 1-to-1 with the manga. So yeah, Zeph and Sanji really loved as well their introduction of them kind of arguing with each other. They took a little bit of a different angle than we get in the manga, but I think it builds perfectly up for the ultimate thing of Sanji while leaving the party. So I think it was really well made, and you can really understand Zeph's psychology and how kind of he works. And he's a really interesting character, and I absolutely loved him in the live action. We also get the introduction of a character that everybody was waiting for, Mihawk. So before the actual release, I knew that Matt's favorite character in the live action was Mihawk. And I was like, how good can Mihawk be to be Matt's favorite character in the live action? Because I saw Buggy in the teaser. I saw how amazing he is. There's just no way that Mihawk would be that good. Well, I think I still do prefer Buggy because he is a bigger character in the scope of things. But Mihawk was amazing. Just the introduction was absolutely fantastic. And I love, because again, this is something that I really wanted them to go for, but they didn't make Mihawk as such a serious character, because he is a little bit more serious in the manga, but I love that they went with a little bit of absurdity. Like the way we meet him and he's fighting at the same time, like this is really badass, this is really cool. But at the same time, he's a little like sassy and stuff, and it feels like a cliche of like an action movie with a guy, you know, talking with the Bluetooth thingy to somebody else, being like, yeah, I'm taking care of whatever, you know. And it's really funny. I love how it was made. His intro is absolutely epic, and him, you know, with the bounty again, absolutely love that. It was amazing. And we do see Don Krieg there completely being destroyed. And I think that this makes almost more sense than in the manga, because how would Don Krieg escape Mihawk? I don't know, really. But I think, yeah, it was really well made. I loved Mihawk. I love the actor. Stephen Ward is absolutely hilarious. If you do not follow him on Twitter, do now. And it's not me asking you, it's me ordering you to do it, because it is absolutely hilarious. He makes gifs of himself, like reaction gifs of himself, to be able to answer to like every fan. It's just peak. It's lovely. So from that, we kind of get Koby hearing, I think it was in that context, that Koby heard that Garp was Luffy's grandpa. And so with all of this and with other things, we kind of start to get more of a development in the relationship between Koby and Helmappo. So this is not just with this arc, it goes all the way throughout, but I really loved what they did with, as I said again, how their relationship just evolves and ultimately blossoms into a beautiful friendship. I think that was really good, really well made. And I've talked about Koby and Helmappo enough in the latest video, so I'm not going to be taking too long for this. But yeah, I just loved it again. Helmappo is his actor, again, I keep on repeating myself, but he is truly amazing how he's able to go from this exaggerating kind of brat energy to him being very likable at the end of the day. So this was really good. So now we get Sanji meeting the Straw Hats for the first time and hitting on Nami. This is one thing that everybody was waiting for. Him, you know, flirting with one of the ladies. And so we get to Nami first, and this was absolutely beautiful and perfect. This is everything I could have hoped for. It was just tasteful, just right enough. Him giving this long tirade about what kind of water and what the fuck she wants to eat and drink and whatnot. And then when he leaves, there was Zoro making fun of her, being like, oh, madam, you know. I just loved it. And again, the crew interactions were really, really good. I have to say, again, this is the following of what I said in the first video. But Zoro and Nami's relationship, I really loved how they developed it through this arc. We have at some point a bar scene between the two of them where they try to deduce things about each other. And I really love this for both of their characters because they end up being both wrong about each other. And it gives you a clear indication on their character, because usually that kind of scene is made for two reasons. Either show how smart a character is, and so they deduce things from somebody in the first try, or how their kind of ego or their vision of the world prevents them from actually understanding the other person. It can be also a merge of the two. But here, they both get nothing right about the other person, which was pretty funny, I think, especially on Zoro's side, because, you know, Zoro kind of, I think he's the one initiating this little game between the two of them. I think it was pretty hilarious because Zoro, he is more calm and cold and reserved, and he's going to really look at things, and he doesn't trust people easily, he takes a little bit of time to do that. And so for him to think that he has the ability to understand people really well, I think is fantastic, because he doesn't. He's just so kind of untrusting of people in general that it prevents him from actually understanding what the person could be going through, and that there could be reasons for them to act a certain way. He doesn't really sense those underlying emotions and stuff. He doesn't really get them. He's the kind of guy that just sees what he sees. And I think that was really well portrayed throughout, notably this scene. And then later on, when it continues on with Nami, we see how first he feels kind of affected by the fact that she left, but then ultimately he is the one who doesn't want to go after her and is like, yeah, she decided to abandon us. And you can kind of see that maybe, he has some issues with not abandonment, but getting attached to them, probably because, he literally lost the person who was the most dear to his heart. So that is understandable. I really love that for his character. We also get Sanji and Luffy interacting for the first time, the two of them together in the kitchen. Sanji talking about his dream and all of this. I think it was absolutely lovely. They just so naturally get along, but in a way that is very different from an Usopp and Luffy, for example, because you can sense how they're both so different, but they both have the same heart. They both really care for other people, and so they really bond over that, and I think it's absolutely beautiful. Sanji and Luffy's relationship is beautiful. I think it was well portrayed there. So with that, we also get the Gin scene. As I said, I was not mad at all about Don Krieg not being there. My only, thing where I was like, oh, that's a little bit sad is Gin not being shown. But fortunately, they decided to put it in. Still, I think it's a very iconic thing, Sanji deciding to give food to this guy who was starving and dying. So they did do it. I was really happy with that. I gotta say, Taz's acting with Sanji and just him getting into the character feels so natural. I'm just blown away about how good this casting is, from the Straw Hats, from the main characters to the supporting cast. Everything is just on point. And so that leads us into the Zoro versus Mihawk. Everything was nailed with this. From the build-up of Zoro asking Mihawk in a duel, which was great, by the way, just Mihawk pulling up at the bar, Usopp being drunk, talking to him, that was hilarious. I never knew I needed some Usopp and Mihawk interactions. Again, that is just a proof of what the type of direction that they went with Mihawk, and made him, they made him a little bit less serious, which I think was necessary, in particular for one specific scene where he blocks Zoro with the one little sword, because yes, this is humiliating to Zoro, but it's ultimately just silly overall. He has his crucifix and he just he just stops. It's silly, the pause that he takes and stuff. So I feel like they made him a little bit less serious, but still, you feel the confidence, you feel the charisma in the guy, and it works perfectly well. So I love the fights, the choreography was great, the intensity was great, Mihawk's theme, the music, fantastic again, the sword sounds effect, fantastic, Zoro ultimately losing, the speech about not wanting to lose again, with Luffy, the way they reacted to him losing, and then the consequences of Zoro falling into sort of a coma. This was really well made. I loved the entire thing, especially the development that it gave us for Luffy, who, he was hopeful, as he usually is. He was like, yeah, Zoro is going to wake up, and Usopp and Sanji were trying, even Zeph were trying to very kind of softly try to explain to him that he might never wake up from such a terrible wound and fight. And he just couldn't believe it for a single second. He believed in Zoro so much, and he couldn't believe that he would lose a friend in that way. And so it was absolutely heartbreaking to see this entire thing. And when Zoro ultimately wakes up, it's just the love between these two. It's absolutely beautiful, and it reminded me of them seeing each other after all this time in Wano. That was absolutely lovely. It really reminded me of that, the kind of energy. And just Luffy being, ignoring the fact that Zoro is literally in pain and almost dead. And he just like jumps on him and hugs him and stuff, even though he has like the wound on his chest. That was very Luffy. And also, during the time that Zoro was kind of in a recovery and a coma, we also had this scene of Nami talking to him. Talking about how, she doesn't want to make friends because she ends up hurting people. And so this is the important moment where we see a switch up with Nami, which is a great build up for Arlong. And so this is, as I said, a really good build up to see Nami kind of switching, and you start to understand that, yeah, this is going to be the ultimate moment for Nami as well. Something is really going to happen with her now. But before I get to Arlong being at the Barity, I want to talk about Sanji's flashback. It was amazingly done, and especially the island part was so one-to-one with the manga. That was absolutely amazing. But most importantly, I don't remember this being in the manga or even in the anime, but Zeph's introduction in the ship, him wanting to re-season like Sanji's soup and whatnot, and then Sanji being such a brat at that age, that was absolutely hilarious. I love little Sanji's actor. I think he did an amazing job, and he was adorable, but at the same time, he had this little angel face, but he talked trash to adult, like, everything was possible. It was really funny. But yeah, this entire flashback was really well made and was heartbreaking. Zeph eating his leg, I'm glad that they didn't censor that. And honestly, in this entire show, they didn't censor much. We didn't have much blood, but the violence was there. Zoro cut in half a guy in the first episode, and here we get Zeph cutting his leg. So I think that was really great. I loved everything. Zeph's acting and how, when he sees Sanji realizing what happens, you can see Zeph's eyes starting to kind of, get wet and stuff. And, him explaining to Sanji how he has the same dream as him and he cannot let him die. I think that was absolutely beautiful, and again, a beautiful, perfect build-up for the ultimate moment of Sanji having to live the Barity to achieve his dream. How he felt so strongly about Zeph and he couldn't abandon him, etc. But Zeph feeling like by staying there, he, wasted his leg literally for Sanji and stuff. So yeah, that was absolutely amazing. And then we get, as I said, Arlong coming to the Barity. So first of all, I really like that they incorporated a fishman before. That was a really good idea, I think, to kind of tease us the existence of the fishman, but also they used him while in the Arlong sequence of Arlong being like, oh, you're serving humans, etc. You're putting yourself down. I think that was really well made. And this change of Arlong coming earlier, I think, was not problematic at all. It was really well constructed and, again, built up with, Nami talking to them on the Bluetooth thing and whatever. And so Arlong coming here made a lot of sense to me. And there's also the buggy element. And they used buggy really well as well for a scenario. For them ultimately going to Arlong Park later down the line. And the thing with the ear was very clever. Really fun. Loved all of this. So yeah, with Arlong, we clearly get the idea of the kind of guy he is. Straight up get introduced to the racism that exists and the history. And I'm happy that they didn't shy away from those themes, and that's what I was expecting really from this live action. And so we also get the Arlong versus Luffy round 1. It was very much one-sided and I loved it. Luffy drowning, you feel again kind of, it almost became a traumatic thing, with the flashback and the parallel with the buggy situation. Seeing him drown really hurts to watch, actually. Then Sanji saves him. It's really good. I love how Nami ultimately leaves the crew and how she still kind of tries to protect Luffy in a way, by saying like to Arlong, oh, you shouldn't waste your time eating him. Just let the sea do the work for you. And so with that, we move on to Arlong Park, the last arc and the last 2 episodes of the One Piece live action. So, as I've previously stated in this video, Nami is my second favorite character in Straw Hat in One Piece. She is very special to me. And when I first watched it with my brother, I really forced myself not to cry. I held back the tears during the entire show, but when I finally watched it on my own, no. The entire way through her flashback, I cried. In the happy moments with, Nami, Belle-Mère, and Nojiko together, them, playing in the grass and whatnot, I was crying from joy. Then in the sad moments, I was crying from pain. I cried all throughout. I loved all three of the actresses for Belle-Mère, Nami, and Little Nami and Little Nojiko. Belle-Mère is officially One Piece's best mom, even though there's a second person. People fight over it. Just kidding. People don't fight over it. But yeah, Belle-Mère is one of my favorite mom from One Piece. And then obviously there's Genzo, best dad in One Piece. Definitely there's no other contenders. But I was so sad that we didn't get to see more of Genzo. Grant Ross is absolutely amazing as him, and I really love the character. I'm just so sad that we didn't get to see more of him. It's actually crazy. We got more Bogart than we got Genzo. I'm sick. I'm sick of it. So going back into the present, we get to see the Fishman. I love what they did with the Fishman. The makeup, Arlong Park in itself, how kind of Nami interacts with them, and then there's obviously Arlong. Arlong is phenomenal. I love how the actor played him, and I love that they went with prosthetic makeup so that you can really see all of his acting and facial expressions and all of this. And I think it was beautifully, wonderfully done. You can really feel his anger and you feel bad for him to a certain extent. This is how they made those villains feel really full and human, in a way, with Buggy as well. You can feel how they've suffered and stuff, and with Arlong it's even worse because there's this history of pain and slavery between the humans and the fishmen. It's absolutely terrible. And so you understand very clearly his perspective, but you still feel so bad because he's obviously in the wrong with what he does to humans and to Nami. And everything was amazing. As I said, Arlong Park, the way they made this into a theme park, I already talked about it in the trailer reaction, so I'm not going to touch on it too much. But this is a beautiful reference to the manga and into the Sabaody arc. We also get the reference to the Fishman with the history, who is not really touched upon in actually Arlong Park and the manga and anime, but we talked about it later down the line. So again, they very cleverly picked stuff that we know from later to incorporate it here to make it more full and complete. We also get the Admiral Nezumi, this rat. He is just the original rat. I hate him. Fucking hate him. And he was just spot on the way they did, the costume and the makeup, and his acting is you just want him to die. I mean, I know I do. If there is one thing that really broke my heart almost the most was Nami and her treasure. When he comes to get her treasure and Nojiko has to hold her back from, kind of attacking the marine and stuff because he's taking her treasure that she had put her blood, sweat, and tears literally to put together to be able to save her village. And you have this zoom and focus on them, resembling like the gold and the money and putting it back into the safe. And I don't know how it's made, but it's really, really well shot. And you feel her pain. It's truly heartbreaking. And this focus on the gold and the money, and all of a sudden it hits. It makes you understand Nami's relationship with money. And in all of this, it's beautifully done. I don't think that in this live action there's as much a focus on Nami loving money. I think they make much more of a focus on Nami being a stealer and having this kind of view of like rich people and whatnot. They push that rather than, Nami being like a gold digger or whatnot. Like Nami really loving money. I think because this is more of like the lighthearted way to put it. In the manga, it's more of a joke. But here they make it a little bit more serious, and with this ultimate moment, it's truly heartbreaking. And I just love Nami's character, man. I cannot emphasize this more, but Oda is really good, with some of those, female cast. It's really, really good characters, and I I'm such a fan. A quick note on Nojiko. I loved her. I love the actress, and I love the scene with Sanji where they're trying to get information on Nami, and Sanji is like, you know, kind of using his wrist to be able to get to Nojiko to talk with his cooking and stuff. It's really fun. I love that. I also loved the Marines, so Garp, how Mabo and Kobe going to the Bear Tea, and having Zeff and Garp interacting was not something I thought I needed, but it's just absolutely perfect. And them ultimately talking about Roger was beautiful, and it's a perfect build-up for the ultimate scene of Garp and Luffy at the end of episode 8. So love that. Then we finally go to the fights, and the fights are great. I really love them. I love the choreography. It was really, really fun. I know a lot of people are disappointed we didn't get Octi versus Zoro. I think that there was probably a bunch of reasons why they didn't put him there. I think personally it was not necessary, even though, you know, Octi comes back in the story later on. I think there's definitely a way to introduce him in another way. But Zoro was heavily injured, much more than in the manga from the fight with Mihawk. And so we kind of got the focus on him through the recovery rather than with the fight with Octi. So I think it was kind of a way to replace this entire thing. And I really loved the fight, especially obviously Arlong versus Luffy. I think was beautifully done. I loved Inyaki's acting in this. Arlong's acting was also amazing. I love how it was shot, how it was done. The special effects, again, absolutely amazing. I don't talk about it, but the special effects for Luffy's fruit is perfect. It's the perfect balance of kind of cartoonish aspect with realistic. The feet going through the roof and cutting the building in half was impressive to see in real life, quote unquote. The payoff was amazing. Oh, and I didn't even talk about Nami's biggest scene. I don't know why, it's just, I'm all over the place. But yeah, we did get the huge scene of Nami kind of falling on the ground and starting to have all of the emotions come up together. Her screaming, you know, Arlong's name and, you know, stabbing herself in the arm. And that was really well acted on Emily's part, really well made. And then we also have the ultimate walk to Arlong Park, and they nailed these two very iconic moments, and I cried. Obviously, I just kept on crying. It was something. And then we go back to the ultimate defeat of Arlong, which was very great. I love Nami jumping on, like, I think it was, Zoro and Usopp, and, Sanji being, like, left alone. It was pretty fun. And then all of the village eating, together, Sanji hitting on Nojiko, as he does. And the Sanji and Zoro bickering was absolutely excellent in this arc. I loved it. I just love how they did Zoro's character, man. I didn't talk about this one scene, but at some point, I think Luffy was like in a bad mental state. I don't exactly remember what the context. It was probably when Nami left. Was it? No, I don't remember what the context was, but Luffy was sitting alone on the sheep's head, and they kind of talk all together about how they should deal with the situation, and Luffy feeling a certain way, and so they all decide that Zoro should be the one going to talk to Luffy. And so he goes up there and he's like, "Hey, how are you doing?" And Luffy is like, "I'm good, thanks." And then Zoro is like, "Do you need to talk?" And Luffy's like, "No." And Zoro's like, "Awesome." And then he leaves. This is exactly how I envisioned a typical day on the Mary being like. And this is exactly how I envisioned Luffy dealing with some, difficult stuff. This is exactly like him kind of shutting down and just not talking. This is exactly how I envisioned him. So it's perfect to see that it's how it was made. So I put this random moment here to talk about it, but anyways. Something I was a little bit surprised is, and I think it was a lack of time, it was probably just cut from the entire show, but we didn't get much of an explanation about Nami's tattoo, because maybe you didn't even notice this if you're live action only, But Nami changes her tattoo at the end of the arc. It changes to like this windmill, I think it's how it's called, with the tangerines and stuff. And we didn't get the explanation to why. And I think this goes kind of hand in hand with how Genzo lost a lot of his screen time. I think a lot of this was cut. It was a bit unfortunate. It's not the biggest deal, but it was a bit unfortunate in my opinion, especially because Arlong's tattoo it's such a big deal, right? It's the big reveal of her being in the crew, and then there's the moment where she stabs herself, so it's quite a big deal, and it's a little bit unfortunate that some of those parts were cut. We also get Garp and Koby and Hamapo coming to Nami's village. And I absolutely loved Koby and Hamapo kind of refusing, to obey Garp because they knew that it was not the right thing to do in this moment. I absolutely loved this. And this Luffy and Garp fight was very unexpected. It's not in the manga because Garp doesn't appear until much later, but there's no such fight at all. And so I was a little bit afraid when it started. I was like, where are they going with this? I surely hope they're gonna respect like the power scaling and whatnot. But yeah, Garp just destroyed Luffy, and it was still a really good fight. I love how it was choreographed, but the most important thing in this entire fight was the ending of Garp holding Luffy and Luffy starting to laugh in the face of danger, and Garp being reminded of Roger in this moment. And he ends up, dropping Luffy. He starts laughing. And he looks at the sky. In a way, I think he probably thought about Roger in this moment. I love, again, the hinting of Roger and Garp having some past history together was great here. It was a very powerful moment, and it was a great way, I think, to replace Lockdown, because if you're not familiar with the manga or the anime, there is this last arc in East Blue Saga that is called Lockdown, and there's a moment where Luffy is in a dangerous situation. I'm not going to spoil in case they decided to still put it. I highly doubt it in season 2, but Luffy is in some type of dangerous situation, and he laughs it off. He laughs just like Roger, and another character at this moment, who is not Garp, is being reminded of Roger. Like, this Luffy laughing in face of danger reminds him of the Roger's execution. And so I think this was a great way to replace it, and I really liked it as well for Garp's character. I loved how they did him, and yeah, I think it's fun. From this point on, now that this entire situation with Garp and Luffy is resolved, I think we might get to see a bit more of a goofy side from Garp from this point on, maybe in the future seasons, because now he's not as stressed, I guess. Because, Garp is a pretty funny character in the manga and the anime. And so with that, we get Luffy's first bounty, and I love that it's Koby giving it to him. Again, one of the other many great changes that they made for this live action. I just love this moment of them reuniting the last episode, and it kind of just circles back perfectly together. It packs everything. It's wonderful, and they have an ultimate hug before separating, and it's absolutely beautiful. I love Koby and Luffy, as I've said already in the first video. This was a really great conclusion for their adventures, and they're both now going to get stronger on their own side, and it's wonderful. I loved, obviously, everybody reacting to the bounty. If you're not a One Piece fan, you don't know, but this is a very iconic part of One Piece. Each time that Luffy and his crew kind of get a new bounty, an upgrade, there is, all of the people that not all of them, but a lot of the people that they met along the way, seeing their reactions on how, they're happy about Luffy becoming this greater pirate. And so here we see Kaya's reaction with Usopp being in the back of it. It's absolutely adorable. There's Zeph putting him in like the employee of the month board. This is hilarious, and it's a beautiful nod to the manga as well. And obviously there is the iconic scene. I was so hyped about seeing this one scene of Mihawk going to see Shanks. And so we do see Shanks nowadays because so far we had only seen him in a flashback, and so I do like how they portrayed. You do feel a little bit of a difference between him and the flashbacks, and I just love this entire thing. I love Shanks and Mihawk. to me, they're absolutely hilarious. There's this history between the two of them, and the fandom loves to argue about these two, and I think it was absolutely hilarious. Like, you know, Mihawk pulling up by himself on the beach where Shanks and his crew are hangover, and Shanks starts to kind of tease him. He's like, you know, telling his crew to be a little bit more presentable because they're in the presence of a warlord. You know, he kind of makes fun of him a little bit there. And then Mihawk is like denying that he comes here for a fight, being like, I wouldn't want to fight you when you're half the man you used to be. And then Shanks again being like, no, you're not beating me. You know, I think it was very funny. I absolutely loved seeing these two again. And we jump to, I think, what is the last scene, which is the barrel scene. I loved it. It was really, really well made. I love the parallel with them as kids, each saying their dream. It perfectly encapsulates everything that One Piece is, and it's a beautiful way to conclude the show. We also get the post-credit scene of a certain character being teased. Smoker, I can say his name, there's no problem with that. So yeah, Smoker being teased was surprising because I was like, you know, thinking that maybe they would have cut him all together from the narrative. You know, even though we do see him in Roger's flashback of the execution, we do see him as a little kid. I was still like, you know, kind of wondering if they would put him in season 2. And so we do get the confirmation that he is apparently being built up for season 2. So he's probably going to be our main antagonist. I don't know if we're going to get Lockdown actually, but somewhere he's probably going to pull up in Alabasta or some shit. So that is great. I'm really excited about this. I would have loved to have Ace, honestly, as the post-credit scene, but I totally understand that we didn't get him. It's fine with me. As in conclusion, I'm completely in love with this show. Again, it made me even more of a fan than I already was. It's such a beautiful and inspiring story, and I feel like it really stands out from the other popular series on Netflix, and just overall, the love and the good stuff that it makes you feel and stuff. It's absolutely fantastic and phenomenal. I love what it's doing for the culture. I mean, it's a Japanese story being adapted by an American company who was filmed in South Africa with actors from all around the globe. I mean, it's absolutely wonderful for culture. All the stuff that it's doing, I love it, and I would also love to know your opinion. So don't hesitate to comment some of your thoughts. Were there some changes that you didn't like as much? What were your favorite things? I want to know it all. So yeah, thank you for watching this video, and I see you in the next one. I have a lot of stuff to come. So yeah, bye.